Now, the number of people in England waiting to start routine hospital treatment has hit a record high. An estimated 6.5 million people were on the waiting list at the end of September. Now, the latest figures show more than 391,000 people across England have been waiting more than a year for the treatment they need, whilst more than 10,000 have been waiting 18 months for routine treatment.
Jim Butler Daulby has been on the NHS waiting list for a cardiac ablation for a year now, and he joins us. Jim, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. I mentioned a cardiac ablation procedure. What is it, and what difference will it make to you when you do finally get it done?
What it is a freezing of one of the chambers. The AF is for me, it's an electrical problem where my heart has irregular beating, and it fluctuates sometimes from the most ridiculous fluctuation was 52 beats a minute, immediately up to 178 beats a minute, which has a profound effect on me physically. And it's to regulate my heartbeat, basically. That's what an ablation is.
And of course, you've been waiting a long time now. As you say, your heart rate varies enormously. That has real symptomatic problems for you, doesn't it? Tell us how it makes you feel.
The biggest impact for me is breathlessness and lack of energy. For a while, it affected my mood quite seriously as well, because I became seriously depressed. But I was out, one of your earlier items, I was out regularly walking my dog 2-3 times a day, doing 3 or 4 mile hikes across hills. If I do 200 yards now, I'm out there and I have to sit down. So it's aged me profoundly.
So it's had a huge detrimental impact on your life, and the longer you have to wait, the longer that goes on, Jim. Have you been given any indication about when you might be able to get this procedure, and if there's any hope for you coming up?
There's a procedure, I believe, in the National Health Service that if you've been waiting longer than 40 weeks, you can go on another waiting list for another hospital.
And you've been waiting longer than 40 weeks, Jim?
Yes, and I received this letter, and I've put in, my name is on another list for another hospital within a sort of 40 mile radius from where I live.
So can I just ask you, I mean, I used to work on a team that did ablations. They're relatively straightforward procedures, but they have a major impact on the patient's lives. So as you know, it is very straightforward actually to do these ablations. Do you think when they factor in all the figures, and we talk about waiting lists in the abstract, do they realise what it's done to you? I was very struck by you saying it's aged you.
Well, yes, the waiting list has. I went through a stage of panic, basically, because it came as a shock. This condition came as a shock, because I've always been quite physical and active. And suddenly, I mean, I know I'm getting on a bit now anyway, so bits are going to fall off naturally and things are going to sort of wear down. But this just aged me suddenly. And I initially was panicked by it, and then when I was told that it's a simple procedure, and I was put on a list, and initially I was told 3 months, and then that 3 months came and went. I revisited the consultant. He said, well, the waiting list has extended a bit, and then I got into a state of panic because I have a teenage daughter. She's 14. I have my dog, who like I said, doesn't get anywhere near as much exercise as she used to do. And then I went through a stage of depression, and my mood sank, and I just almost gave up hope. And I kind of accepted the fact that it's linked to perhaps I'm knocking on a bit as well. So I'm getting older, and it's something I've begun to accept. But I think it would have a much better effect if I had this procedure and I could return to some normality.
Jim, you painted a really clear picture there of both the physical and the mental health implications of being on the waiting list for so long. Stay with us. We're going to bring in now Dr. Chand Nagpal, former chairman of the BMA. Dr. Nagpal, we've heard there Jim describe what it is like for him to be on the waiting list. He's one of 6.5 million people on a waiting list. Now, Rishi Sunak had made it a priority to start cutting those waiting lists, but actually we're seeing them go in the wrong direction. Why?
Yeah, so it is so distressing to hear Jim's story. And remember, there are about nearly 400,000 people waiting more than a year, as part of 7.75 million people on waiting lists at the moment. And as you correctly say, it was a priority for the Prime Minister in January of this year to reduce waiting lists. And yet what we're seeing is the total opposite. Month on month, waiting lists are growing, not reducing. And also, we've seen the pledge of more hospital beds. The reverse happen because we've got 2,600 fewer hospital beds today than at the beginning of the year. So when you ask why, it is a clear mathematical imbalance between the demand on the system and the capacity, and that is not being addressed. The other issue is that estimates between 1 in 6 to, in some cases, half of patients in hospitals are medically fit to be discharged, but they can't be due to lack of social care facilities and abilities to be actually safely managed at home. So, we are also exacerbating, or the government's exacerbating the problem by not addressing those issues around social care, which could make a significant difference. But, the situation is even more bleak than this because there's also a hidden waiting list. I'm a GP, and I not only every single day, a significant proportion of my appointments are taken up entirely because of patients who are so distressed, pleading to see if I can help them get onto a waiting list, pleading with me whether I can actually expedite their appointments. And in fact, I'm powerless. I can't do anything about it. But also there are large numbers who are yet to get onto a waiting list because they're waiting 6 to 12 months to even see a specialist. So in fact, the scale of wait is much greater. And also, don't forget that these are waiting lists for people waiting for operations. There are also large numbers of waiting lists that are not even being measured about patients with mental health issues, patients who are waiting for a neurologist with Parkinson's disease, patients who have diabetes, who are all waiting for specialist care.
Sorry, can I just jump in very, very quickly, if I may? It's really good to talk to you again. Just in terms, I'm so pleased you brought up the invisible waiting list, 20 million people waiting for appointments and procedures. But also you mentioned the beds, 300,000 beds we had. We're now down to 140,000 beds. We spend £160 billion a year on the NHS. What's the answer?
I really do think that the answer is, this is my view, is to take the politics out and just do some common sense use of resources. And in fact, if you're going to reduce hospital beds, how can you in the same breath say that you're going to reduce waiting lists? If you're not going to address issues around social care, how are you going to expect patients to be discharged from hospital? So there is a dissonance.
Dr. Chand Nagpal, I'm sorry, you're making a really important point there, but we are running out of time. I'm going to have to end that there. But Dr. Chand Nagpal and Jim Butler, really good to hear from both of you.